U.S. President Donald Trump has once again pressured South Korea and other allies to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz. He said economies other than the U.S. get much more oil from the vital waterway, and also emphasized that the U.S. has provided security protection to its allies. But amid renewed calls, European countries rejected military involvement in the crucial oil choke point. Leaders of countries including the UK and Germany signaled clear reluctance, saying they will not be involved in the war. Nvidia is holding its annual GTC conference, often dubbed the Super Bowl of artificial intelligence, attracting thousands of people in California. Their company CEO Jensen Huang announced that its new AI chips were being manufactured by Samsung Electronics, and said they would be shipped in the second half of this year. Hello and thanks for joining us this morning. We begin today with U.S. President Donald Trump's renewed calls for South Korea and other nations to help secure the Strait of Hormuz. He said economies other than the United States are more dependent on the vital waterway and urged them to be more enthusiastic. Our Kim Bo-kyung starts us off. U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday once again urged countries, including South Korea, to actively help reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Speaking to the reporters at the White House, Trump said the U.S. strongly encourages other nations whose economies depend on the strait to help secure the key oil shipping route.
You know, we get less than 1% of our oil from the strait, and some countries get much more. Japan gets 95%. China gets 90%. Many of the Europeans get quite a bit. South Korea gets 35%. So we want them to come and help us with the strait.
Though Trump did not single out any particular nation, he accused allies of showing low enthusiasm for the coalition and added that enthusiasm would matter to him.
Some are countries that we've helped for many, many years. We've protected them from horrible outside sources, and they weren't that enthusiastic. And the level of enthusiasm matters to me.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio also stressed the importance of global cooperation to ensure security in the Strait of Hormuz, a move seen as laying the groundwork for an official request at the U.S. government level. This during Rubio's phone talks with his South Korean counterpart Cho Hyun on Monday. The talks were held at the request of the U.S., and Rubio, according to the Foreign Ministry, asked for support and interest to bring peace and stability to the region. Earlier, the Blue House had kept a cautious stance regarding this issue during Monday's briefing, saying it needs sufficient deliberation between Seoul and Washington. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News. But U.S. allies are pushing back against U.S. President Donald Trump's call for military support to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, as Iran's actions continue to disrupt vital global energy shipments. European leaders say the escalating Middle East conflict is not NATO's mission, exposing growing divisions with Washington as the war enters its third week. Our Shinsegae has more.
Several key U.S. allies said Monday they have no immediate plans to send naval forces to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz, pushing back against President Donald Trump's request for military support to keep the vital waterway open. Trump had called on partner nations to help police the strategic strait after Iran responded to joint U.S.-Israeli strikes with drones, missiles, and naval mines, effectively shutting down tanker traffic through the narrow channel. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the world's most critical energy choke points, normally carrying about 1/5 of global oil shipments, as well as large volumes of liquefied natural gas. European leaders signaled clear reluctance to involve NATO in the escalating conflict. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz made it clear on Monday that Germany would not take part in the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran.
Like the United States and Israel, we want to see an end to Iran's nuclear and missile programs, but we will not take part in this war. We have said this from day one. That remains the position of the federal government.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer also rejected suggestions that the military alliance could be used to secure shipping routes through this strait, reinforcing a broader European stance against expanding NATO's role in the crisis.
we will protect our people in the region. Second, while taking the necessary action to defend ourselves and our allies, we will not be drawn into the wider war. And third, we will keep working towards a swift resolution that brings security and stability back to the region.
The pushback comes as tensions grow between Washington and its European allies over how far the alliance should be drawn into the conflict, which has now entered its third week. Shinsegae, Arirang News.
International oil prices fell on Monday as U.S. President Donald Trump reiterated his willingness to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Brent crude futures for May delivery settled at $100.21 per barrel, down 2.84% from the previous session. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures for April delivery also declined, closing at $93.50 per barrel, falling 5.28%. The decline in oil prices comes after Brent crude prices rose to their highest close in 3 years and 7 months last Friday. It also comes amid reports that some tankers were passing through the Strait of Hormuz and follows President Trump's request for support in escorting oil tankers. And President Lee Jae-myung has urged the government to prepare for the worst-case scenarios stemming from a possible prolonged conflict in the Middle East. Speaking at a cabinet meeting held in Sejong City this morning, he said oil prices have begun to stabilize since the price cap was implemented, but warned of further uncertainties. He called on officials to supervise prices on-site to make sure the price cap is actually reflected at the gas pumps, and instructed them to swiftly organize an extra budget. On top of finding alternative energy supplies, he mentioned the possibility of temporarily limiting the use of private vehicles and placing export controls on certain items if necessary. And U.S. President Donald Trump has requested to delay his upcoming trip to Beijing, initially scheduled for later this month. U.S. officials are denying speculation that the delay is tied to pressure on China over security in the Strait of Hormuz. Our Oh Soo-young has more.
US President Donald Trump says he has asked China to delay his planned visit to Beijing by about a month. Speaking at the Oval Office on Monday, Trump said he still wants to travel to China, but feels he needs to remain in the United States while the Middle East conflict continues. White House spokesperson Carolyn Leavitt said earlier in the day that the dates may be moved as Trump prioritizes overseeing the US military operation against Iran. The Beijing trip had been scheduled for March 31st to April 2nd for talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping that had been expected to help stabilize the rocky relations between the world's two largest economies. This comes amid tensions around the Strait of Hormuz, as Iran has threatened to set fire on vessels transiting the vital waterway. Trump has urged several countries, including China, to help protect commercial shipping in the strait, but Beijing has not directly responded. Still, preparations for a potential Trump-Xi summit have continued. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng held 2 days of talks in Paris aimed at preparing possible agreements on rare earth supply chains and expanded Chinese purchases of US farm goods. Wrapping up the talks on Monday, Bessent said if the summit is delayed, it wouldn't be due to war politics, but logistics.
If the president's visit is postponed, it would have nothing to do with the Chinese making a commitment to the Straits of Hormuz. It would obviously be in their interest to do so, but a postponement would not be as a result of any ask from the president not being met. The postponement, if it happens, would be because the commander-in-chief of the United States military believes that he should stay in the United States while this war is being prosecuted.
Beijing said Monday that the two sides remain in contact regarding Trump's visit.
Heads of state diplomacy plays an irreplaceable role in providing strategic guidance for China-U.S. relations. China and the U.S. are in communication regarding President Trump's visit to China.
The spokesperson did not respond directly to questions about Washington's call for assistance in the strait. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Nvidia
Nvidia's annual developer conference, the GTC 2026, has kicked off in California. CEO Jensen Huang announced that the company's new AI chips are being manufactured by Samsung Electronics, and also unveiled that Nvidia will be working with Hyundai Motor Group to develop autonomous driving technology. Our Park Jun-an tells us more.
Nvidia's CEO Jensen Huang declared that the inference inflection point has arrived with the rise of AI agents, shifting the focus from training massive models to super responsive near-instant AI interaction at an unprecedented scale. Speaking at the GTC 2026, Huang predicted that soaring demand for AI processors will drive $1 trillion in sales by 2027.
Finally, AI is able to do productive work, and therefore, the inflection point of inference has arrived. AI now has to think. In order to think, it has to inference. AI now has to do. In order to do, it has to inference. AI has to read. In order to do so, it has to inference. It has to reason. It has to inference. Every part of AI, every time it has to think, it has to reason, it has to do.
During his speech, Huang delivered a special shout-out to South Korea's tech giant Samsung Electronics when introducing the company's latest Vera Rubin chip.
I want to thank Samsung, who manufactures the Grok LP30 chip for us, and they're cranking as hard as they can. I really appreciate you guys.
This marks the first public confirmation that Samsung is now producing custom AI silicon for Nvidia. On the same day, Hyundai Motor Group announced a strategic partnership with Nvidia to accelerate the development of software-defined vehicles and autonomous driving. The South Korean carmaker will adopt Nvidia Drive Hyperion for Level 2 advanced driver assistance systems and eventually Level 4 robotaxis. The system processes massive amounts of AI data, combining Hyundai Motor Group's manufacturing capacity with Nvidia's AI computing power. The partnership focuses on collecting video, language, and behavioral data, improving AI training and performance, applying the technology to real vehicles, and further enhancing data quality. GTC 2026 runs through Thursday, drawing prominent Korean tech leaders, including SK Group Chairman Choi Tae-won, who was in attendance. SK hynix showcased its next-generation high-bandwidth memory solutions at the event, where Che indicated to reporters that the company is considering a U.S. ADR listing to broaden its global investor base. Park Jun-an, Arirang News.
Shinsegae Group will build a 250-megawatt AI data center, the largest facility of its kind in South Korea, in the first deal done under U.S. President Donald Trump's AI export program. Shinsegae Chairman Chung Yong-jin and Reflection AI CEO Michelle Laskin signed an MOU in San Francisco on Monday to establish a sovereign AI factory, with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick in attendance. The facility will utilize Nvidia GPUs supplied by Reflection AI, a startup founded by former Google DeepMind and AlphaGo developers. Shinsegae plans to use the massive infrastructure to drive its EMAR 2.0 initiative, integrating AI into retail logistics and commerce. The two companies expect to establish a joint venture within the year to begin construction. Meanwhile, North Korea will hold the first meeting of the Supreme People's Assembly this Sunday to discuss constitutional revision and elect state leadership. According to the Korean Central News Agency this morning, the upcoming session comes after North Korea completed the selection of new deputies for its assembly, following last month's 9th Party Congress. All eyes will be on whether or not the North codifies its policy describing the two Koreas as hostile states, and if leader Kim Jong-un addresses the regime's external relations. The assembly is widely known as a rubber stamp parliament that formalizes decisions already made by the ruling party. And staying in North Korea, the regime's leader Kim Jong-un has once again highlighted the troops dispatched overseas to aid Russia in the war in Ukraine. The North Korean Central News Agency said Kim visited a memorial being constructed to commemorate the achievements of North Korean forces in overseas military operations. Kim said the memorial will be completed next month to mark the first anniversary of what Pyongyang and Moscow describe as the liberation of Russia's Kursk region. Ukrainian forces have seized the seized the territory in 2024 before Russian forces, backed by North Korean troops, pushed them back in April last year. With 93% of the memorial's construction complete, Kim instructed soldiers and artists working on the site to create an immortal sacred hall. The National Museum of Korea is launching a bold new initiative. Its calligraphy and painting gallery has officially reopened after renovations and will showcase a series of masterpieces each season. Our Cha Yun-kyung tells us more.
The National Museum of Korea, which closed its doors last August for renovations, has officially reopened its calligraphy and painting gallery. A new exhibition offers significant narrative depth by tracing the history of Korean calligraphy through stone inscriptions spanning from the Three Kingdoms period to the Joseon Dynasty. Additionally, the gallery has lowered the barrier to classical art by showcasing the iconic Sun, Moon, and Five Peaks, a piece that recently gained popularity through its appearance in the series K-pop Demon Hunters. The centerpiece of this renovation is the themed exhibition section. To commemorate the 350th anniversary of his birth, the gallery is currently highlighting the legendary artist Gyeomjae Jongseon. This exhibition brings together masterpieces previously seen only in textbooks, including the album of paintings of Kumgangsan Mountain made in the Shinmyo year, which marked the beginning of true view landscape painting, and his late career triumph Hakyeon Falls. This marks the inaugural showcase of the museum's new initiative to feature seasonal masterpieces within the calligraphy and painting gallery.
With seasonal rotations, we plan to highlight 2 or 3 must-see masterpieces under the title Masterpiece of the Season, including familiar works in school textbooks.
Works of calligraphy and painting are highly susceptible to damage if exposed to light for more than 3 months. So, the museum has traditionally rotated them on a regular basis. Now it provides a curated series that introduces different textbook masterpieces for every season.
It is a one-point special exhibition designed to bridge the 4 seasons, giving visitors a compelling reason to visit our museum at least 4 times a year.
As the newly transformed calligraphy and painting gallery is expected to drive a new wave of repeat visits, the upcoming global museum attendance statistics will provide a clear measure of the international standing of the National Museum of Korea, which reached a record-breaking 6.5 million visitors last year. Cha Yun-kyung, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. A total blackout has paralyzed Cuba as the nation's crumbling electrical grid suffered a complete systematic failure. The Cuban Ministry of Energy and Mines on Monday confirmed a complete disconnection of the island's power grid, leaving 11 million people without power. It's the 3rd major island-wide blackout in just 4 months. Cuba has blamed President Donald Trump's recent warning of tariffs on countries that supply oil to Cuba, which has effectively intensified a U.S. energy blockade against the island. President Trump on Monday even suggested the possibility of a friendly takeover, describing Cuba as a, quote, very weakened nation. As well as oil shortages, the Cuban government lacks the hard currency to repair its aging thermoelectric power plants. Former French President Nicolas Sarkozy returned to court in Paris on Monday to appeal his conviction for illegal campaign financing involving the Libyan government. Sarkozy is challenging a September ruling that found him guilty of forming what was described as a criminal association to secure funds from the late Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. This landmark verdict marked the first time a former president of modern France received an actual prison sentence. Although the 71-year-old leader spent 20 days in prison last year, an appeals court ordered his release pending this new trial. 9 other co-defendants, including 3 former ministers, also face re-examination of evidence in hearings scheduled through June. Sarkozy has denied all wrongdoing and called the legal proceedings politically motivated. A federal judge in Boston has blocked the Trump administration from cutting down the U.S. childhood vaccine schedule. Judge Brian E. Murphy issued a temporary injunction on Monday against Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s order to end broad recommendations for several childhood vaccines. The decision pauses the administration's plan to stop universal shots for flu, hepatitis, and meningitis. Judge Murphy said that Kennedy likely violated federal law when he changed the entire vaccine advisory panel. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
The air is still looking pretty dusty out there today. A fine dust emergency alert is in place for the capital area in parts of Chungcheong-Namdo province, and emergency dust reduction measures are being enforced. Incheon is also under an ultra-fine dust advisory, so please avoid spending time outdoors if you can and keep a mask handy. Meanwhile, a mild westerly breeze will send temperatures to the mid to upper teens, and Seoul will be getting up to 15 degrees Celsius. Daegu, Gwangju will be topping out at 18 degrees this afternoon. Now looking ahead to Wednesday, rain will move into the picture. Showers will begin before dawn across the southern regions in Jeju. And along the southern coast in Jeju, the rain could be much heavier with 10 to 50 millimeters expected on the island, possibly through Thursday. But that rain should help to wash the dust in the air. And after the rain system moves out, we'll continue in this typical early spring pattern.
That's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.